Have you ever wondered what would happen if a financial scam got so big it didn't just ruin a few lives, but took down an entire country? Well, today, we're diving into the absolutely wild story of how pyramid schemes did just that, pushing a whole nation into economic collapse, total chaos, and even civil war.
And this wasn't some fringe thing. We're talking about 2 out of every 3 people in Albania. Think about that. Almost the entire population pouring their life savings, selling their homes, and betting their futures on the very same schemes.
And when that dream inevitably came crashing down, it didn't just empty their bank accounts. Oh no, it lit a fuse that led to thousands of deaths and the complete breakdown of society as they knew it.
So you have to ask, right? How is that even possible? How does an entire country fall for the same trap? What on earth was going on in Albania that allowed these scams to grow into a monster that would devour the whole nation? To really get it, you have to understand the backstory. Because Albania in the 1990s wasn't just any country. It was a nation coming out of a long, dark, and isolated past, which made it uniquely vulnerable for the disaster that was just around the corner.
For more than 40 years, Albania was basically sealed off from the rest of the world. It was ruled by a brutal dictator who outlawed private property, foreign travel, even religion. So when that regime finally collapsed and a new democracy was born, it was like the whole country was stepping out into the sunlight for the very first time. But the reality on the ground? It was harsh. Albania was the poorest country in all of Europe. Its economy was a wreck, it had no real infrastructure, and there were basically zero rules for finance. And most importantly, the people were absolutely desperate for a better life.
And this right here is the crucial piece of the puzzle. You have millions of people who had no clue how markets, banking, or investing worked. They were financially illiterate, they were desperate, and they were hungry for the prosperity they thought capitalism would bring. They were, in short, the perfect target.
And right on cue, what looked like a dream come true showed up. It came in the form of these new investment companies that promised a kind of wealth that was just beyond anyone's imagination. To a nation that had nothing, it felt like salvation.
Just look at that number. Not 50% a year, 50% a month. Now to you and me, that just screams scam, right? It's a massive waving red flag. But to the people of Albania, it looked like a straight-up miracle.
And here's the context that makes it all click. The average person was making $80 a month. 80. So when someone comes along and offers you a return that could change your life in a matter of months, it's not just tempting, it feels like your only way out.
This quote really gets to the heart of it. This wasn't just about greed. For so many, it was a genuine misunderstanding. They'd been told for years that capitalism was the way to get rich, so they probably just assumed, hey, this must be how it's done in the West. And there were some powerful reasons to believe. The government itself was openly cheering for these schemes, which made them seem official. The biggest firm, Vefa, was a well-known company. They had supermarkets, gas stations. It felt real. It felt trustworthy. And remember, this is before the internet was a household thing. You couldn't just Google it. So people went all in, selling their homes, their farms, literally everything they owned.
So what was the grand total? A mind-boggling $1.2 billion. In a country with a tiny, struggling economy, that was equal to about 10% of their entire GDP. A whole nation had gambled its future on a single impossible dream.
And of course, a dream like that was never going to last. Because every pyramid scheme has a fatal flaw built right into its DNA. It is designed to collapse. And in late 1996, the whole house of cards was about to come down.
So just as a quick refresher, a pyramid scheme isn't a real investment. It doesn't create any actual value. It just uses the money from new people to pay off the people who got in earlier. It needs an endless supply of new cash to survive, which is impossible. So the collapse isn't a risk, it's a certainty.
The whole thing started to unravel when Vefa, the biggest and most trusted firm, finally failed. That's when the panic hit, a tidal wave of it. Everyone scrambled to get their money out, but the money wasn't there. It set off a chain reaction, a domino effect that toppled one firm after another until the entire system just imploded, and it took the life savings of a nation down with it.
But the financial collapse, that was only the beginning. The rage, the betrayal, and the sheer desperation of a whole country going broke overnight, well, that quickly boiled over and turned a nation of broken dreams into a full-blown war zone.
At first, the protests were peaceful. People just wanted their money back. They were desperate. But in February of 1997, a line was crossed.
government forces fired on the protesters. And that single act was the spark that ignited a civil war. The breakdown was unbelievably fast. We're talking weeks. The prime minister resigned, a state of emergency was declared, but it was too little too late. The government had completely lost control of the country, forcing the UN to send in thousands of peacekeeping troops.
And things got even crazier. As the police and army fell apart, soldiers just abandoned their posts, leaving military armories wide open. An estimated 700,000 guns were looted from these armories. In a country of just 3.5 million people, the nation was armed to the teeth overnight, and it descended into total anarchy.
The civil war that followed was short, but it was brutal. By the time the dust finally settled, 2,000 people were dead, all of it tracing back to a financial promise that was always, from day one, too good to be true.
Eventually, the fighting stopped, but the damage was done. The pyramid schemes left a scar on the soul of the nation, one that has taken decades to even begin to heal.
The economy wasn't just hurt, it was completely destroyed. A whole generation lost all hope, leading to a massive wave of emigration that left behind empty villages and ghost towns. The recovery has been slow, it's been painful, and the country still fights the legacy of corruption that allowed this disaster to happen.
You know, the story of Albania is an extreme case, for sure, but it carries a warning for all of us. It forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question. In our own moments of desperation, or maybe even just ambition, what is it about the promise of easy money that can make us ignore our own better judgment? And how do we protect ourselves from the kinds of dreams that are designed to destroy us?